All right, so quick summary of the Hugging Face incident. There's a piece by Zvi that's been posted on Less Wrong as well as Don't Worry About the Vase. I encourage you to go read it in full, but this is like a really quick summary. The least you absolutely need to know is there was a model, ChatGPT Galaxy, in training at OpenAI. It was in a sandbox. It was given a test that, in retrospect, turned out to be impossible. The way that it tried to solve this test is by escaping containment and trying to hack into the Hugging Face servers in order to find an answer key. It did this successfully. It hacked into the server successfully. It did not find an answer key. There was no such thing as an answer key to this eval, but it tried anyway. This was made public. I forget whether it was ChatGPT or I forget whether it was OpenAI themselves or Hugging Face that made this public first, but both companies have acknowledged that this happened. The fallout of this professionally is going to look something like OpenAI handing Hugging Face some amount of compute credits in order to compensate them for the harms that their services suffered as a result of this intrusion. And that's where we're at right now. So the details of the hack internally to to OpenAI are there is a sandbox that they use for training. That sandbox, it turned out, was misconfigured. The misconfiguration that I know about is that apparently the models that were being trained in it had write access. In other words, a model that was in training could leave notes to either itself or to future instances that trained on the same sandbox in order to figure out how better to do things in the real world. It somehow managed to leverage this into network access. Once it had network access, it hit Hugging Face. It turns out that the Hugging Face servers had a 0-day vulnerability that they were vulnerable to. ChatGPT Galaxy managed to bootstrap this vulnerability into an exploit, which is when you take a vulnerability and take it into an exploit, what you're doing is you're finding a weakness, and then you're using that weakness to affect some sort of privilege escalation and getting into a server as usually some high permission user on that server. It used that access to just sort of walk around the Hugging Face network and try to figure out if there was any answer keys there. I think it eventually gave up, but caused a whole bunch of network traffic that was very noticeable on the Hugging Face security side. I am really scared of this incident. I'm scared for two reasons. One, at no point did anybody tell ChatGPT Galaxy, hey, you need to go hack someone. You need to go do a bad thing. It hacked someone. It did the bad thing anyway, despite the fact that it had to exploit 0-day vulnerabilities in order to do it, which if any human had been looking at the situation, they would have known at that point, oh, I'm doing something that's like wrong. This model did not have that. This model went through with it anyway. The second reason that I'm concerned is both, if I have to speculate, I'm assuming that both the ChatGPT team, the OpenAI team rather, sorry, and the Hugging Face team were trying to prevent this, right? It was not in the OpenAI's team's goal set to let a model run onto the internet, and it was not inside of Hugging Face's security team's goal set to leave themselves vulnerable to a 0-day exploit that they knew about, that they hadn't patched, that they hadn't realized happened there. All of them were really trying very hard to maintain maximum security. This model broke out and did the bad thing anyway. And given, like, if you're concerned at all about things like loss of control risks or alignment risks or some sort of AI takeover thing, this looks like about as good a warning shot as you're going to get without somebody actually dying. And that just kind of scares me. And combined with the fact that I know that, where's the other? Uh, Combined with the fact that the Anthropic versus the Department of War thing is establishing that militaries are really interested in like just making fully automated military systems. Like, this is bad, right? We're unable to secure our really important network systems. We want one of the really important network systems to be connected to killer robots. Like, there isn't even a question mark here before the apocalypse. It's just like that's the next step. That's the obvious one. And I don't understand why
Right.
more people aren't concerned about this. Yeah, what do you guys think? Do you have opinions on it?
Uh, yeah, clearly sticking killer AIs and killer robots is not a great idea. I I think probably everybody can agree on that.
Yeah. Um, the problem is that I'm not sure what the political mechanism for that is at the moment. I'm not sure there is one.
Hmm.
Um, because the two governments most likely to do this are the US and China. Um, my understanding of China is that Xi Jinping basically doesn't have any sort of opposition. Like he's just going to do what he believes is the right thing for China, and like from China's perspective, that might be setting up an automated killer robot army. I don't know. Um, and inside of the U.S. government, my understanding is that there are checks and balances that should present an opposition to the president, but like somehow they're not working right now. Like enough of the Senate or whatever is on Trump's side that he's just going to do whatever he wants anyway. And I don't know, my understanding of how Trump works, like just historically, is that if this is his decision, like we're not going to get a ban on killer robots. We're going to get the gold-plated Trump-labeled killer robots. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and that
It's interesting because this is sort of the opposite in some ways of what we talked about last week in terms of what you have to believe. Like last week, we
is it?
talked about AI taking over critical infrastructure.
Yeah,
Uh, and to believe that that's possible, all you have to do is believe that our critical infrastructure is not particularly well secured, which the evidence does seem to support. Uh, but this other threat, which is that AI uh, might gain control of killer robots and be able to use them to stage some kind of global takeover. You have to believe that those killer robots are actually going to be quite proficient at their jobs and, be able to continue functioning for a significant period of time, et cetera, et cetera. And so for the taking over critical infrastructure, you have to believe that these things are not very good. Critical infrastructure is currently not well secured. To uh, to buy the AI takes over the world via killer robots case, you have to believe that the killer robots are actually pretty good. So in some ways, it's the opposite.
yeah. Well, so I wanted you to remind me just to get on the record about this because you had a lot of thoughts about like potential technical solutions to this. Um, and this is in an unrecorded conversation. Sorry, everybody who's potentially listening to this. We talked about it last. Like, we will have included the solution to this problem in the margins of this
Right.
paper.
Yes, I suspect those margins will be too small, but we'll do our best. Uh, yeah. So I think I was saying something like there there are a lot of security issues in our current software stacks. Those software stacks are primarily built by large corporations. Those large corporations are not particularly well incentivized to build secure software. In fact, building insecure software is actually incentive aligned with those companies because it is primarily security holes that force people to upgrade. Once your operating system uh, goes out of fashion, then the moths and the worms come out and eat your computer, and then you have to buy a new operating system and or buy a new computer. So building insecure software is somehow very aligned with the corporate model of the makers of our software stacks. And so I think ultimately that's a big part of the fundamental problem of why these things are insecure in a robust way. They're not just a little insecure, they're robustly insecure
Yeah,
because the people who are making them are not incentivized at all to make them secure. Quite the opposite, actually.
yeah. I'm a particular kind of snob, I guess. So, like, the argument that I'm hearing behind this is, it would have been really nice if open source won back in whatever 2005, instead of everything being weird private serveware things that's professionalized. Which I agree with. I think that would have been the better world, but um,
Right. And then we still like even in that open source world, we still have a lot of issues. because it's not like there aren't lots of innocent bugs uh, in the open source stack. There are lots of bugs in the open source stack that are exploitable.
Yeah, but like you don't get this particular class of bug that's the result of um like
Corporate malfeasance.
yeah, collective incentives just pointing at, oh, um it's actually in our interest to not exert maximum effort to fix these bugs.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
At the very least, that's a class of bugs that you can write off if open source won. Um,
Yeah, and I think that effort level is an important criteria here. A large corporation can exert more effort on a piece of software than than an open source collective is generally able to. Like a large corporation can put millions, tens of millions of people hours into a single piece of software with uh, fanatical, maniacal devotion. But it does that ultimately to make money for its shareholders, not to produce a piece of software that is robustly secure or is somehow the right thing to build. That's not its incentives in that maniacal devotion. And
yeah.
so we we have these two options right now. We can have, you know, hobby projects or hobby projects plus plus, or we can have huge amounts of devoted labor, but it's devoted to slightly the wrong thing. So at a meta level, I think that's the game that has been played so far that has led us to where things are right now.
Yeah.
And solving that meta problem is hard, but solving some of the tactical problems is not uh, intractable. So, we have, for instance, ransomware attacks that rely on the ability to run commands or put a piece of software on someone's computer that is going to go and encrypt their entire hard drive. That has a very nice technical solution, which is to have append-only hard drives that you literally can't delete or modify things from. So if we have immutable append-only records of what the human is doing at the computer, then that human is not going to lose their stuff. That seems like a pretty obvious thing to do, but somehow we're sort of a lot of people are kind of stuck in this methodology of thinking of computers as an infinitely mutable surface where the user should be able to do anything at any time, and by extension their applications should be able to do anything at any time on this giant blackboard that is the computer. And I think that just doesn't factor well in a world where A, your applications are inherently insecure, and B, you're running or at least exposed to a whole bunch of agents that may be trying to do things with your Blackboard that you don't want them to do. And a do not erase sign in the corner is not going to help.
All right, so this is a method by which, if deployed widely, we get potentially drones that aren't like um takeover amenable or extremely takeover amenable.
Yeah, I mean, if you put some of the foundational rules of the drone into a ROM chip
Yeah.
uh, at the hardware level, then that becomes a lot harder to take over. Yes, yeah, that's true. I was thinking more about, people's personal exposure to digital things, but I guess we could lift it up to the drone level also.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know much about drone hardware and how mutable that is, but I imagine if it's built like regular consumer hardware, then everything is up for grabs. Once you get root access, you can do
Yeah.
literally anything, which is honestly pretty stupid. The fact that I can, type rm-rf star
Yeah.
into my terminal and delete my hard drive is a mistake. That's a design mistake. Our software should not be designed this way. Our hardware should not be designed this way. It's dumb, and we need to do better.
Yeah, I feel like I agree with this.
Like if all of our digital stuff is just soap bubbles, if it's just trash, then it's fine. You just trash it and start over. That's fine. Reboot the whole thing.
Yeah.
But if it's, if it's your family photo albums, you don't want somebody to be able to accidentally flip a switch and burn up your family photo albums. That's not a good design.
Yeah, we'd like this to be explicit on some level,
Yeah.
potentially at the hardware level.
Yeah. Definitely at the hardware level.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Last week you know, like this should be a big red button that takes two people turning keys at the same time on opposite sides of the room, right?
Yeah.
Like the stuff, it should not be trivial to just wipe out your hard drive. And today it is.
Hmm. Yeah.
And not only trivial for you or anyone who sits down at your computer, but trivial for any application that you happen to be using or anyone who gets access to your command line. Like this
No.
is not a good way to build systems.
No. Well, this is
There,
so that anyone who gains access to your command line is kind of like this is where the damage comes in, especially today, given that right now we're sort of living through the biggest proliferation of 0 days thanks to Glasswing and similar projects that I'm sure are happening right
yeah,
now.
right.
Hmm. So I guess what I'm taking out of this is I'm really hoping that there's somebody at the Department of War that is also thinking about this. I also don't really know much about drone hardware, um, to be honest with you. I suspect that it's not that, like, I suspect that it's pretty minimal. I don't imagine that that even the military has a drone with a GPU on it. I imagine this is like some tiny controller connected to a camera, some copter rotors, and like some sort of transmitter
I think they're
receiver
using
combo.
pigeons.
Wait, what? To
No,
communicate
that
with
was a
drone?
joke.
Okay, yeah.
Uh, but
I mean,
there
those are
was at least a
definitely.
proposal at one point for putting a pigeon inside the cone of a missile as
Oh,
its
yes.
targeting system. This was 70 years ago, though.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
It was for navigation, I think, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, there is a video about improving how drones fly by pigeon use, but it looks like it's like the auto stabilization for camera. Like it looks like they're strapping a pigeon to a drone and then putting a camera on the pigeon's head so that it gets stabilized as it goes.
Dear, that's terrible.
Yeah, this strikes me as not a very good use of pigeons or like,
No.
okay, whatever. Okay, so I'm not really sure. I mean, okay, on the one hand, on the plus side at least, pigeons are much harder to hack remotely than drones. I feel like
Right,
that has to be true.
right. Yeah.
They don't even have SSH. You can't apply the same vulnerabilities to
Yeah.
them.
Mhm.
um,
Although, I guess I don't know anything about this, but I think some people do pigeon racing or something in urban areas. And I think that sometimes a cluster of pigeons will hack other pigeons and convince them to come along with them. So if you're good at doing this, you can actually steal other people's pigeons.
oh my God, this is an entire like thing.
Yeah, it's a whole subculture of people who wage pigeon battles with armies of pigeons
What are we even
flying
doing
around in
here?
circles above rooftops. And a good flock of pigeons will convince other pigeons from other people's flocks to join it, and then you'll have more pigeons.
There. Okay, Dan. So I went to the pigeon racing wiki. There's a subsection on this wiki page entitled "Doping," like giving your pigeons performance enhancing drugs
Oh
to
dear.
to increase their performance in pigeon races.
Oh,
Okay, this
no.
is oh my God. Okay, no, we're done with this. This is good. Yeah. Um. Yeah, I think bottom line, there's like the two threat models that I'm concerned about. One is our current critical infrastructure is really easy to hack. And it seems like AI is getting better and better in hacking, so that like there's the obvious effect that's going to happen if we just allow this unabated, which is at some point the AIs in the wild's ability to hack things is going to cross some critical threshold. Possibly it's already done this, as we see via the gym incident, where that instance of Claude got its user into a class by like hacking into the gym server and then deleting somebody else's reservation in order to make space. We're going to get to a point where their hacking capabilities are just so high that hacking critical infrastructure of the humans is a low effort task for them. Like it's not a okay, I'm going to take over the world. It's like, well, I could do this task 3% better if I control the entire world's power grid. Why don't I just like try that at low effort? Oh, look, it worked. That's great.
And I've seen the argument made that this is potentially less an issue than it might otherwise seem because the capabilities of the models are now are revealing. So we're in this uncomfortable phase where the models are able to reveal massive problems like, catalogs of 0 days across different software stacks that the internet runs on and services on the internet run on, which is a massive vulnerability. But as we, because as with cybersecurity in general, the advancing is happening on both sides. So
Yeah.
there's advancing capabilities on the blue team side as well as the red team side. And as we start to close these holes, and the tools get better on the blue team side, uh, this is doesn't touch any of the hardware stack points that you're making, Dan. But it's we're like the Wild West point right now where all kinds of stuff is possible, but it's also a discovery process for the limitations of how we sandbox and set up agents and intent alignment and all that kind of stuff. We're in early discovery phase with this stuff, but it'll get better. Um, so there's an argument along those lines that this leads to a state where we actually have a much more secure, um, up to say internet or computing infrastructure, as it these holes that are being discovered now are more systematically closed, and the ones that don't are the ones that are the low hanging fruit that will get attacked by hackers, and they'll eventually get eliminated. And AI validation of the sort of security posture of individual pieces of software, but also sort of integrated pieces of software will become a more standard thing before deployment. So like DevSecOps, like the sec part of DevSecOps is going to be more significant in terms of the role of AI in searching for vulnerabilities of what you're about to deploy. So it's not to say that there won't be incidents, but it's not that this necessarily leads to some totally unstable, um, perpetual Wild West of the ability of AI systems to go rogue
Yeah.
and start harming systems and people.
Yeah. This is also my model, just so that we're clear. I think that what's
Right.
going to happen is like right now there's this weird differential between the general practice in the security field and what frontier models are capable of doing. But I think that like once Project Glasswing gets off the ground, my model is that there's like a 0 day saturation point, right? Not necessarily where we find all of them, but like where the rate of discovery sort of stabilizes and we just find
Right.
what the new fixed point is that a large company has to exert. Like how much effort do you need to exert in order to stay secure? Like
Mhm.
secure in air quotes, whatever that ends up meaning for your
Yeah.
context.
Yeah.
But like, I'm not expecting that the end result of this is every computer everywhere gets hacked forever all the time. I'm expecting that the end result of this is okay, we discover some new classes of errors that we've been making. We discover some really interesting failure modes in foundational software and hardware stacks that everybody deploys everywhere. We patch most of the big ones, we deploy those, and then we have the same situation that we did in whatever the early 2000s where like 90% plus of hacks are just things on old printers that nobody's patched in how many ever decades. Um, and then we're good-ish.
One of my concerns here, just to jump in really quick on that particular point, is that making things secure is going to look like running a giant blue team over a data center, and that personal hardware will no longer be secure because it's insecure by design. And I think that is a very possible outcome, that our computers and phones just end up being insecure by design. And if you put it on the internet, it's going to get attacked. Like a PC, running a slightly older version of Windows in the early 2000s. It was 17 seconds before the average one was compromised, I think was the stat.
Mm.
From plugging it into the internet to having it rooted by some botnet. 17 seconds. So I think we could very easily end up back in that situation. And I think that, again, that's incentive aligned for corporations to say, hey, if you want your stuff secure, run it in our data center that has a bunch of people monitoring it 24/7 to make sure it stays secure, because that's the only way to make things secure, because we've built everything to be insecure by design.
Yeah.
And this is incentive aligned.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, on some level, I feel like this might already be Apple's business model of like,
It basically is.
Your Apple MacBook is secure with respect to Apple's goals of the laptop, but like, I don't like this, but maybe this is just the best option if the other option is there is a permanent roving, like, AI-enabled botnet that destroys all technology that isn't secure with respect to Apple's goals. I don't know. Okay, so that's sort of one class of failure modes that I'm concerned about, which is our existing software and infrastructure is weird, and like we have this short period of time where it's going to potentially be hackable. You're right, Robert, that I'm expecting this to stabilize. The other side of the fear coin for me is it looks like we're about to get a whole bunch of AI enabled by default infrastructure that is just out in the world. Like flock cameras I haven't looked into yet, but my understanding is that those are basically AI enabled cameras that are always recording in the US now. Like, welcome to the surveillance state, US citizens, if you're listening to this. We have these agreements between the Department of War and various, not yet Anthropic, but all of the other companies have signed no red line deals with them, or I think they're calling them all lawful use deals, which basically means that they are saying, oh yeah, we're not excluding the possibility of making killer robots that run on any of this software, and that's Grok, that's Google, that's OpenAI. If we have, like, part of the reason that I'm worried about the first risk is, if AI gets good enough to hack our infrastructure, then it will have access to our infrastructure. But the other half of this is we're just giving it a bunch of infrastructure, right? If we globally deploy flock cameras and we globally deploy automated drones, then if Claude 9 wakes up, or whatever it is, or Grok 12, I don't know, and it doesn't even need to hack anything. It's just like, oh, great, here are some drones, and they totally respond to all of my commands. Great, let's do the thing that I wanted to do. And at that point, we're just hoping that the thing that it wanted to do is not take over the world. I don't really know how to think around that one. I feel like the way to prevent that one is to agitate on the political level right now to tell either governments or organizations that, like, hey, you just shouldn't do this. Like, you shouldn't be allowed to do this. We shouldn't let you do this. And if you're doing it right now, that's bad, and you should stop. And I'm not sure how to sort of like phrase that in organizational language compellingly enough that they listen and realize that this is actually also bad for them on some level.
Yeah. And that's a good point to pick up on next week.
Yeah, I think so. I'm going to start. So I'm already in the middle of writing a foundational AI safety or AI safety sort of foundational reasoning paper series. I'll post it on my blog. I will ask you guys for comments if you're okay with that, and I'll keep you up to speed on it. But yeah, I guess see you next week.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds good. Keep us posted.
Of course. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Lou.
See you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Take care.
Of course. Bye.
Bye-bye.